What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down how quarterbacks can throw farther. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope it can teach you a few new things. But also, fellas, if you're a QB and you'd like to get some work in with us this offseason, we are going to be traveling out to 15 more states across the country for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camp. So next up on our camp tour, we'll be coming out to San Francisco, then Orlando, New Orleans, Charlotte, Dallas, the DMV, St. Louis, Honolulu, Boston, Cleveland, Austin, Seattle, Newark, New Jersey, Denver, and Los Angeles. So if you guys are local to one of those cities and would like to get some work in with us, fellas, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to have you out for a 2-day-long camp, 8 hours of training total with a ton of value. So very first link below, fellas, let's get started. So I'm going to be showing an example of myself here throwing a ball that's maybe about 50, 55, 60 yards, somewhere in that range. And then we're going to be showing two examples of Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady throwing a deep ball and showing how you guys can increase your throw distance. So your hitch when you guys are throwing deep is super important. You have to be able to get your weight back. So what do I mean by being able to get your weight back? So you see when I drop back on this and I hitch up. Now, again, I'm not the biggest guy in the world. I'm maybe about 5'9", 5'10" on a good day. But, even at that size, even at me not weighing a whole lot, especially when I played high school ball and college ball, I still had a pretty decent arm solely because I had very strong legs and a very strong core. So a lot of times people think that all of your arm strength comes from your upper half, but that is not the case, because when it comes down to throwing mechanics, your arm is probably the least important thing in terms of strength. Your arm has to have flexibility. You have to be able to, rotate. You have to have good range of motion, but your power is going to come from your legs and your hips. How much ground force can you produce, aka weight transfer, and how much rotational force can you produce, which is what we call torque. So it comes down to your hitch. So how many times, you guys have hit the top of a drop and you're waiting for a receiver to get downfield? Like, let's say you're taking a shuffle drop, big 3-step drop, and you land like this. You look almost like a kickstand on a bike. You have a lot of weight on your front foot, you have a lot of weight on your front side, and that is completely fine. A lot of times when you were dropping back and you're dropping back with some speed, you're going to end up with a lot of weight on your front side because you're getting depth. You're waiting for that deep post, that deep fade to develop. So when you go to hitch up on the throws, so many quarterbacks make the mistake, and we're going to be showing a bad example of CJ Stroud doing this here in a second as well. But when a lot of quarterbacks hitch up, they leave that weight on their front side. They don't take that weight that they have on their front foot and shift it to their back leg. The goal is to be able to get my weight back, because when you get to this position with your back foot underneath your back shoulder and you have about maybe 65-70% of your weight on your backside, that allows you to take that weight and transfer it to the front foot, which will help you increase your throw distance. Now, here's the issue that guys will have. They'll get to this position, they'll rock their weight back, but when they go to drive and they go to throw and they go to transfer their weight, they don't have any kind of close of their front side. They don't have hip and shoulder dissociation, which is a fancy word for saying your hips are going through as your shoulders are going back. So you see, that's the position I'm in right now. As my front foot is starting to get down, my front side is closed and I am taking the ball back. My hips are driving through, but my shoulders are going back. Now, obviously, it's a deep throw. If you're trying to throw this ball as far as you can, it may not look like it's the prettiest thing in the world, but these are the key places that we need to get to. We need to get my weight back. We need to have my shoulder closed. Now, the importance of having my weight back is not only that you can transfer the weight forward, but so you can get to this spot where your shoulders rotate back. So many guys, when they take that hitch and they leave their weight on their front side like so, you physically cannot rotate your shoulders if all your weight is on your front side. You could try something right now. Stand up, put your weight on your leg. Let's say you're a right-handed quarterback. Put your weight on your left foot. Stand on one foot and stand on your left foot. Now try to rotate your shoulders. It's very hard. Now stand on only your right foot. Now try to rotate your shoulders back like how I have it in a backstroke. It is very easy to rotate when your weight is back, so it can help you get that hip drive and shoulders separate. I'm sure everybody's seen Dak Prescott do that drill, that warm-up drill. That is exactly what that is for, and that is how you can generate power, because now you're transferring weight, you're letting your hips rotate through, and your shoulders stayed back, so the ball is trailing behind your hips. And it all comes down to your hitch, where your weight is, and how you can separate the upper and lower half for throw distance. So I'm going to play this again real quick. So make sure, fellas, when we look at these next two pro examples of Aaron Rodgers, we're thinking about these two specific things. So Brady's going to be throwing here. He's throwing this deep ball from, left hash, throwing this deep fade to the right side of the field. Watch his hitch. See how the weight shifts to the back leg. Fellas, if you guys want to get 10 yards on your deep ball, 10 extra yards, do this. If you aren't doing this, if you're just kind of taking a hitch without thinking about your weight shifting back, fellas, I highly, highly recommend this because when you start paying attention to this stuff, you see every NFL quarterback starting to do this. So watch when he's here. Are not starting to do this, but they do this. You know what I mean? It's not like this was something that was just brand new invented, but when you see these guys who have crazy strong arms, when, you look at a quarterback and they normally aren't like the biggest physical specimen guy on the field. It's not like they're, jacked, lean. They just look like regular dudes, but they can throw the hell out of the ball. And it's all comes down to mechanics and their leg and core strength. They don't need to be jacked. They don't need to have the biggest legs in the world. Certainly could help, but it comes down to strength. It comes down to mechanics. So when he hitches up, look where his weight is. Weight is on the front side. Watch where his weight goes. Shifts to the backside. His back foot gets down. His back foot is located underneath his shoulder because this is a good position to where if he transfers weight, that hip can rotate through. And when that hip can rotate through and your hip's clear before the ball, that is how we can get power. So let's play this thing full speed one more time, and then we're going to look at Aaron Rodgers doing pretty much the exact same thing. And we all know Aaron Rodgers has an absolute cannon of an arm. So Rodgers goes back. When he hitches up, weight shifts back, and that is a monster throw downfield. It's all the same principles, fellas. It's all about mechanics. Every single quarterback throws the ball differently. I need you all to understand that too. You're not going to throw the ball like Aaron Rodgers, just like how Aaron Rodgers isn't going to throw the ball like Tom Brady. Every single quarterback is different. Every single human is made differently. So why should you try to copy somebody else's throwing motion? But there are key things that the best guys in the world do, and that is what you should be trying to add to your game. So watch Rodgers here. He's here, weight on his front side. You see top of the drop, and he hitches up. Where does his weight go? His weight goes back. Look at what he's able to do with his shoulders. Shoulders are able to rotate, and watch those hips clear. Hips are going through. I know we kind of get blocked by one of his linemen, but his hips go through before the ball goes through, and that's how we can get power. So let's play this thing again full speed. So like I said, we are going to be looking at an example of C.J. Stroud not doing this and what that can do to your mechanics and why it will make you lose power. So he's taking a 3-step drop and a hitch. So let's play it. He takes a hitch, but his weight remains on his front side. Now, this is where a lot of bad habits can come to play. How many of you have probably been told by a quarterback coach that, don't swing your back foot, so don't swing your back foot up like a pitcher, and don't lock out your front leg? Now, there are plenty of guys out there, plenty of quarterback coaches that maybe played 5 snaps of football, and it don't really matter, but they could tell you what you're doing wrong. They can't tell you the reason why you're doing it wrong, and that's what you have to know as a player, especially if you're a guy who maybe is from an area that doesn't have a lot of coaches. Maybe you don't have a ton of people in your ear telling you, it's not like a high football market like California or whatever, where you got 20 quarterback coaches on every corner where they're like, hey, you're doing this, doing this, doing this. Do you know the reason why you're doing it? That's what we were trying to teach you. So when you go back here and he takes this 3-step drop, so he hits the top of the drop and he's at that kickstand position that everybody, every single quarterback eventually gets to here. But the difference between the last 2 clips and this one, and Stroud's a good quarterback, I'm not trying to say this, but it's just a bad example of one throw. But watch when he hitches up here. His weight stays front side. So when his weight stays front side, watch what happens. He can't really rotate that front shoulder like those 2 other guys that we just watched. It's more of just like his weight is here. He's kind of almost spreading his chest, and watch what happens because there's no weight transfer from the back leg because all his weight is already onto his front side. Watch what his back leg does. His back leg extends. That prevents hip rotation. When you have too much weight onto your front leg, that's when that leg locks out. Everything shoots up. So watch what happens with his shoulders. His shoulders are going through before his hips do because that back leg extended. And that is solely because on his hitch, he kept his weight on his front side. Now, you might be thinking, well, coach, who would ever leave their weight on their front side? Why would you intentionally do that? You don't intentionally do it. It's just a bad habit that guys have developed over time of just people constantly doing the wrong reps. And it starts with young kids. You're a young kid, you're 10 years old, you go to a quarterback coach, maybe he's the wrong type of coach, and you're doing a lot of footwork stuff and he doesn't know about this. No knock on the coach, he just doesn't know. And you're building a bad habit of having your weight forward and you don't even realize it. You might even think you have your weight back, but you don't. And we see it in these examples. His weight is too far forward on the hitch, so what's going to happen? His front leg, when you have that much weight, can't support a rotation. So it locks out, back leg locks out, his shoulders end up clearing before his hips do. He's got that overly high release, and Stroud doesn't do this all the time. This is just one example, like I said. But that's the biomechanics of how your body moves. Fellas, we have to understand this, and we got to make sure we correct that, because this right here, your shoulders clearing, that puts a lot of pressure on your arm, but also that decreases arm strength. your distance on the ball will dip if you cannot do this. So make sure, fellas, whenever we hitch up, whenever we step up in the pocket, my weight is back so I can transfer, get hip rotation, and I could rotate with my upper half to get to that dissociation position, okay? So now, next example, we're looking at Aaron Rodgers. So the big thing that decreases a lot of quarterbacks' throw distance and throw accuracy when they're throwing a deep ball is the lean with their head and with their shoulders. So they dip their head out of the throw. Now that comes from kind of the same idea as what we were just talking about with your weight being forward, but also having a very wide base. So let's play this thing full speed. So Rodgers throws this is such a good throw. Like he throws an absolute rope down the sideline with his feet not really even set. But look at his head. His head does not move. His head, like not even a little bit. Like you could put like a freaking concrete wall right here and he wouldn't hit it. He is throwing this thing solely with his legs and solely with his hips. Now, some people say like, hey, you shouldn't try to imitate Aaron Rodgers because what that guy does is freaky. But there are some things mechanically that explain a lot of why he's able to throw the ball the way he does. So watch where he is, because obviously like it's pretty clear he's throwing this with his hips and his legs. It's just a flick of the wrist. It's like he's throwing a baseball almost for a regular person. But look where he is. Top of the drop. Where's his weight? Front side, right? Front side heavy. But watch when he hitches up. Where does his weight go? His back foot gets underneath his back shoulder and his weight gets back. This is a powerful position because now that back foot being underneath his shoulder allows him to transfer weight and to rotate at his hips. So many old school quarterback coaches used to teach have a wide base because they were afraid of a long front stride. So how many of you guys have been told like, okay, you want to be in a base and you want your feet to be shoulder width apart? But here's the issue with that. Imagine if Rodgers, when he goes to make this throw, instead of his foot being on this yard marker, it's out here. So when he goes to transfer his weight, that back foot is going to trail behind him. He's not going to be able to rotate at his hips and go through. So when that back foot trails behind, all of his weight trails behind, and his shoulders end up going through before his hips do. But the reason why he's got his back foot underneath his back shoulder, his weight is back, he's sitting on that back leg, is so when he does transfer his weight, his hips can actually rotate. That hip can rotate through. If you guys could all try this right now. You could stand up, put your feet underneath your shoulders, and try to rotate. Now, put your feet outside your shoulders and try to rotate. Probably can't rotate. You know what I mean? So it's like, and we're going to show an example, a bad example of this in a second. But that's what causes the lean with quarterbacks. Because as a quarterback, we're rotational athletes. You're going to rotate either at your hips or you're going to rotate at your shoulders. It's one of the two because we have to rotate. That's why your rotator cuff is so important. So when you go here and you're in this position with your back leg, your weight is back, you're transferring through. But imagine if this back foot was under your frame and you took a long stride. This is why people used to not teach this, because guys would push off of their foot. So they would push off their foot at the target, but this front stride would take forever to get down. So they would say, hey, be in a wide base, so when you push, your front foot's already out there to catch you, and you have a quicker stride. But it's still the same thing. You're still not going to have any power because your base is way too wide. You have to make sure that we get to this position under my frame, and I am taking a quick stride. The thing that helps me and my quarterbacks think about this is I say you want to drive off of your quad. You don't want to push off the foot. Do not push off the foot. You take that weight that you have on your back quad and you are literally just shifting it. It's like an internal shift almost at your hips because that shift can get the front foot down quickly rather than you pushing like a pitcher and taking a long stride. So we have to get that back foot under my frame so my hips can rotate, and I have to take that quick stride, because that allows me to rotate at the hips. But if I don't have that rotation at the hips, that's when I start to lean. That's when I start to dip the front shoulder. And when you start to lean, imagine if Rodgers' head was not there, it was there. His release point would be so wide and he'd be coming across his body. But because he rotates at the hips, because he stays level with his like spine, if you will, he can actually snap his wrist. He can actually extend at the target, which gives you more velocity, can give you more distance if you're trying to throw deeper, and can give you more accuracy. But it all comes down to your base, because there are so many quarterback coaches out there that I've told you this. I say the same thing with like the last examples we talked about. They will say, oh, hey, stop leaning. Oh, hey, you're leaning out of the throw. You got to fix that. Oh, your front side's dipping. And they're not wrong, but what is the source of that problem? Why are we dipping? Why are we leaning out of the throw? And why is that affecting it? Because then you'll miss and they'll just be like, oh, hey, just flick your wrist to the target. It's like, what good does that do you? That does you no good. Tell me why I'm dipping. Tell me why I'm missing the throw. And that's how we can correct the problem. So let's play this full speed. So again, it all comes down to the same things, fellas. It's about your hips, being able to separate the upper and the lower half. So let's watch this quarterback here. Now, he leans out of this throw, and this is not a deep ball. This is an RPO. So if you're leaning on an RPO, imagine what's going to happen when you throw a little bit deeper downfield. You're going to have a mega lean out of the throw. But look at his base here. Watch when he flips. His base is wide, so his hips cannot rotate. So he goes here, does his play action fake, sets his feet, but look where his foot is. Foot is outside the frame. And guess what? When your base is too wide, where do you think most of your weight is probably going to be? You think it'll be on your back foot or your front side? Your front side. So you're probably going to lock out. You're probably going to swing the leg through, but watch what ends up happening. He goes to transfer his weight, and he doesn't have a long stride, does he? Does not have a long stride, but it would be a long stride if his weight was back. If his weight was back here, that stride would be long because it would strike the ground at the same spot because this is where he's used to. That's what he's comfortable with. That's why you cannot just think about, oh, okay, I'm just going to move my back foot down and then throw because you'll probably still end up having an overstride. But when he goes here and he hits that front foot down, because that leg is so wide, it extends, and watch what comes through first. Shoulders, and for a source of power, because he doesn't have any from his hips, what does he do? He leans. And that is what will cause that deep ball to not really turn over. That's what will cause that deep ball to not be as accurate, just any throw to not be as accurate. So make sure, fellas, we do not have that overly wide base. Let's get that back foot under my frame so my hips can make the throw and I can transfer weight. So, fellas, I hope this helps. I hope this makes sense, and I hope this can help you guys get more distance and more velocity on all of your throws. If you guys have any questions at all, don't hesitate, fellas. Leave those in the comment section below. I'll see you guys next time.